Okay, everyone, welcome, welcome. I will show you now our beginning. Where's my chat box? There it is. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to EduVoice Vietnam. Let's start with this little promotional video while we wait for everyone to join. We have a lot of people joining us today, so we'll give them just a minute to all get here, and we'll get started in just 2 or 3 minutes. Share my sound.
At National Geographic Learning, we serve English learners by reflecting the mission and work of National Geographic in our programs. We are inspired by Alexander Graham Bell's original goal for the magazine, to be about the world and all that is in it. And we try to bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life. If you look at our learning programs, you'll see that they're like workbook versions of National Geographic, filled with incredible photography, fascinating stories, and the real work of explorers. Explorers in particular resonate with learners because the explorer's search for knowledge and understanding is the very essence of education. At National Geographic Learning, we believe it's an incredible world, and we want to share that with students. We want students to be filled with awe and curiosity by amazing photographs and stories of their world and all that is in it. Because we know that a curious student is a motivated student, and we believe that a motivated student will be a successful student. With our programs, we're always mindful that we're not just teaching vocabulary and grammar. We're opening up the world to students who have otherwise not experienced it. Students in China, Vietnam, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Eastern Europe, literally everywhere. We want to help these students experience their world and develop their voices. Besides having great National Geographic content, we also work with TED Talks, and we are TED's exclusive partner in English language education. TED Talks are the single most widely sourced videos for English learners, popular both because of the ideas in the talks and because of the natural English used by both native and non-native TED speakers. Ultimately, the incredible content we have from National Geographic and TED enables us to develop programs that are relevant, motivating, and powerful learning tools that bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Oops, let me get past that. Welcome. Yeah, hello. There's over 230 of you here now. Lovely to see. This is EduVoice Vietnam, our teacher interview and education interview series run by National Geographic Learning Vietnam. Our purpose with this program is to highlight topics and individuals in the education community in Vietnam and discuss topics relevant to our community and find out more from our guests based on their expertise and their experience. We hope this helps bring together different parts of the community and helps connect us all at a time when we could use a little bit more connection. So I hope you guys are all safe and sound right now. I'm joining you from Ho Chi Minh City. My name's Rudy Cohen. I'm the English language teaching specialist, teacher trainer for National Geographic Learning Vietnam. And today we are going to be talking about the national curriculum of Vietnam. And the upcoming changes to the English education of students throughout the country. Before we get a little bit more into that, I want to highlight some people that helped make today possible. First are the wonderful colleagues that I have, including Ms. Chang, who's been instrumental in helping to organize this event and this interview. Ms. Chi, who is in the chat box and is joining us from Hanoi, Thank you so much. He's an inspiration and always a pleasure to have on board, and helps me discuss about the content for this series. And Mr. Will Lachey, who's joining us from Singapore, is also in the chat box, and will be here. Happy to be here, as he says. Thank you, all three of you, for the hard work you've put in supporting this series and happening. Today, we're joined by two different guests, and I'll be letting them introduce themselves in just a moment. We have, but first we have Dr. Hieu Nguyen, and he's a member of the English language community in Vietnam, working in a variety of ways to support schools, institutions, and teachers and innovators in solving modern problems and modern solutions. And our second guest is Dr. Nguyen Binh, who is the head of the English department and chair of the foreign language project at Ho Chi Minh City University of Education. The two of them bring unique experience into our discussion today. I'm going to stop my share now, and I just want to mention to you all that we had over 650 people sign up for today's session. I'm really excited to welcome you all here. And we got all of your questions, your multitude of questions. And we've, it was really a lot of great ideas from all of you. We'll be including a lot of your ideas in our session today. So I hope that this is answers some of your questions and is what you were looking for when you joined us. So the topic is the new national curriculum being implemented by the public education system in Vietnam. This is a topic that many teachers are aware of, but perhaps don't know the background and direction of the new curriculum that it's trying to take, especially around English language teaching. So the two guests both have diverse experience working with schools and institutions across Vietnam. We're going to spend the next hour together to try and get some of the key ideas in three general areas. First, what is the new curriculum? Have a kind of baseline of understanding, a broad look at what the goals are and what's different. Then we'll switch gears a little bit and we'll think about what the expected changes for students are. We'll spend some time thinking about how the student experience might be changed or altered under the new curriculum. And lastly, and very important for all of us here, is what this might mean for teachers and schools. So those are the three general areas. At this point, I would like to welcome our two guests to turn on their cameras and join me here. We have Hieu. Thank you, Hieu, for joining us today, and Binh as well. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. It's a pleasure to have you here. I want to start, as we always do in this series, by asking you guys to share a little bit about yourselves, about what you do, what your work is, and how you got to be doing that work. So I thought I'd start with Mr. Binh, if that's okay. So Binh, I want to know how you got to where you are now. What's your background in general, and what kind of work do you do?
Thank you, Rudy, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm very glad to be able to join you this afternoon discussion about the new general education curriculum. My name is Ben. I'm currently working as a head of English department of Ho Chi Minh City University of Education. I'm also serving as a chair of the National Foreign Language Project of our university, doing different jobs as a coordinator for the master program of TESOL between our university and Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand. My main job is to work as an educator and also a teacher trainer. At my university, I'm in charge of English language programs for students, both those with and without English as a major. In training English major students, we do both pre-service teacher training, English for translation, interpretation, and business English. In addition, we also run a number of professional development programs for in-service teachers of English. we do this on a yearly basis. Last year, approximately 1,000 teachers in 8 different southern provinces joined us in our training programs. In our agenda, teachers at primary, at secondary and high schools were introduced to the National General Education Program and also the English Language Program 2018. So we talked to our local teachers about what it means by competencies, competency-based education, and the essentials of the English Language Program 2018. And of course, the teachers' increasingly important roles and what our teachers should do to be better prepared for the upcoming changes. Some other essential professional development courses include using English language in the classroom, applying technology in ELT, and of course, the updates in testing and assessments.
Right. Seems like you have a lot going on, Ben, and many hats that you wear in your various roles. So just one more question for you, if that's okay. I know that you're involved with, the process of getting textbooks approved for the new curriculum. Can you? How did you get involved, or what inspired you to be involved with that? What's your level of involvement, or what's your role with the new curriculum? Yeah.
Well, I think that one highlight of the introduction of the general education curriculum, particularly the English language program, is one curriculum, multiple sets of textbooks. So with that very important change, I think that there is an opportunity for all teachers and all the students to get access to, a variety of useful resources so that they can manipulate and put into their teaching and learning, to maximize the effectiveness of teaching. And then that is very important point of start for me to join with NGL for the introduction of a new series of textbooks, which I think that very beneficial.
Great, thank you so much, Ben, for sharing with us. Really, really a pleasure to have you on here today. So Hieu, same question to you. Yeah, what kind of work are you involved in? And yeah, any kind of background that you'd like to share.
So basically, I started with education 10 years ago and managed and grew now one of the biggest English after-school learning center series in Vietnam for 3 years. And then I found my love with official K-12 education. So I kind of stopped my work in after-school learning landscape and move into the official K-12 education and founded a management company, consulting company, exclusively dedicated to education. So for the past nearly 10 years, I mostly work in consulting project with school, predominantly in the private sector. So working with K-12, anything from kindergarten to high school to college, and education organization from edtech to publishing houses. So my work kind of vary as it ranges from curriculum design to design of training professional development for teachers, and now move on to more holistic school setup, school creation, restructuring, strategy and planning. So kind of like have a privilege to sit in a sweet spot working with educators, curriculum designer, teacher trainer, and investors. So kind of have a good view of how education is evolving very quickly, but very fascinatingly in the field. And hopefully with some insights from the private sector to balance or clash with the public sector insight from Mr. Binh, it can create a very fruitful conversation that benefit the audience today.
Great, thank you so much, Hieu. So yeah, thank you, gentlemen, for telling us a little bit about the work you do. So I want to get into it and start with my first kind of set of questions. Binh, maybe you can start with the answers to these questions, since I know you work a lot directly with the curriculum and kind of on the ground, right, on the front lines, helping to develop what this content will look like in the future. So what are some of the big differences between the old way, the old approach of education in Vietnam, and the new curriculum? Can you tell us a little bit about what's changing?
Thank you for your question. I think that there are a number of vital differences between the old and the new curriculum that are being introduced. I think that the first and the most apparent change is the shift from content-based curriculum to competency-based education. And I think that this is linked to the philosophy of learner-centeredness. Learner-centeredness views the learners as active agents, and the learners have the opportunity to bring their own knowledge, their past experiences and education and ideas into different activities in the classroom. And it is a job of the teachers to draw on the learner's strengths and also identify the weaknesses in order to organize the most appropriate activities for the students in the classroom. So I think that the impacts created with learner-centeredness, if it is implemented properly, will provide a lot of wonderful experiences for both teachers and students. I think that the newly introduced curriculum is also it's more goal-oriented when all the stakeholders, including the teachers, they have to think more about what positive changes that are needed and meaningful to the students. And this is not simply what the learners want, but also what the learners need. So they need English for a variety of purposes, for example, for entertainment, for everyday life, for overseas study, or for advancing in their future career. So the prospective employees are required to have the language proficiency to be able to perform effectively with their job positions. So I think that communications and interactions join in, and actually they are highlighted in this sense, including spoken and written interaction. For example, the students the prospective employees are asked to interact verbally to be able to present information or share the ideas, or for example, dealing with inquiries and complaints from customers, or writing emails, giving information, etc. And all of these lead to the competencies needed to be developed among our learners. So at primary education will help familiarize our students with English language, while the secondary and high school education will provide the solid foundation, and the university will build and sharpen the students' competencies for their future needs. So
can I ask you
very logical change?
Yeah, no, I mean, so when you're saying move towards competency-based, you're mentioning kind of functional English, English in context. You mentioned different genres and things like that. So how is that different from, because I've worked in private language schools and a variety of schooling contexts, but how is that different from the old method? So what are we kind of coming from, in a sense?
Well, simply put, we have been very familiar with the way of teaching, like we provide the students with what we have, but rather than what they need. So ultimately, with the new curriculum, it requires all the stakeholders involved to think more about how they can identify the needs of the learners and how they can provide the learners with what they need. So correspondingly, the people who implement the curriculum, including the teachers, they will need to think about, okay, what methods I should use, what kind of content should be included, and what kind of materials that should be used, and how the assessment is going to help determine whether the students have achieved the goals of learning or not.
Hieu, do you have anything to add on to that about your understanding of kind of the move from the old way to the new way, and what this means?
So basically, besides what Dr. Binh had just said, I think there's a tremendous shift at the underlying philosophy approach to the design of the new curriculum. So I was one of the students, like many of you, who grew up in the old way of teaching, of learning English, and now kind of like on the other side when I work with educators. So basically, in a very quick sense, the old way, they approach with a structural review. So they see the language as a system of very structurally related elements for the coding of the meaning. Therefore, the target of language teaching and learning is the mastery of elements of the system, such as like grammatical units or lexical items. So in the past, teachers focus a lot on like intensive control on grammatical structures. They focus on accuracy in using the languages, not necessarily fluency. And basically, it does not require the English teacher to be good English speakers, or it doesn't require much of a material developers. There's only one set of textbook, and you stick to this. You stick to the textbook, right? And the cost, of course, is like we kind of like forsake the fluency of using languages. There's too much pattern drills and memorization, so they ignore the role of the context in the reading and in the listening audio. So that's basically like what we kind of did in the past in a very general description. Now we move on to a more functional, interactional view of the language. So language is now like a way for the student to focus on the communication aspect rather than just purely the grammatical characteristic of the language. And it's also a way for the student to, as Mr. Binh has said, to perform interpersonal relations and social interactions among individuals through writing emails and other things that may be relevant to their academic pursuit and the professional pursuit. That's why I think with that kind of shift in the approach of teaching and learning language from the old curriculum to the new curriculum, it requires a tremendous shift in not just the design of the curriculum, but also in the teaching methodologies of teachers, as well as the way we assess the student competency. And I think with the new curriculum, the focus is very heavily on the communicative aspect. So a lot of the shift has to be geared towards communicative language teaching. And I think that is something probably a very big shift and also a challenge as well, not just an opportunity for English language teaching and learning in Vietnam.
Mr. Binh, you mentioned one curriculum, many textbooks. So as Hieu just said, in the past there was a textbook, right? And I guess that was the curriculum in some ways. And so what does this mean? One curriculum, many textbooks. I've heard this as kind of a slogan of the new curriculum.
In the past, the fixed set of textbooks rule. What it means is that we have only one fixed set of textbook, and then on the teachers must make sure that they employ on the lessons based on 100% on the textbook, and they took it for granted that no modifications of the textbooks were allowed. However, with the introduction of the one curriculum, multiple sets of textbooks, the curriculum is considered as the starting point for everything, and it rules. What it means is that, okay, the teachers are required to observe on the things in the curriculum, including the expected outcomes of the learners, including the content and the recommended methodologies and assessment. And then they will make the decisions of what kind of materials that can be used. So in order to achieve, for example, in order to achieve one learning outcome, then maybe one fixed set of textbooks may not be enough. Okay, so keeping that in mind, that the teachers need to be aware that there may be other resources available that they can use in order to support or to facilitate the teaching and learning in order to achieve the learning goals. So that is the basic ways of making sense of the one curriculum or multiple sets of textbooks.
So my understanding is that there's multiple groups, multiple publishers, both domestic and international, that are submitting textbooks for approval, that are adjusting their books to meet the curriculum, right? So will schools have choice between the approved textbooks? How does that work exactly?
Well, I think that in the last 2 years, the policies have changed in order to make it better meet the current conditions of our education system. The teachers were given the rights or the freedom
the input,
Yeah, but last year the policy changed because we need to have a panel. We need to make decisions of what kind of textbooks or sets of textbooks that are allowed or that are permitted to be used in one local authority. So
Okay.
that is a basic change. I think that probably in the future there may be a lot of other changes relating to this. So teachers and even the school management are recommended to observe on the possible changes so as to make themselves very best fit into the situations.
Okay, so we won't get too bogged down on the details of the process, right? Can you share with us just one last question about this before we move on to the next kind of section? What is the timeline of the curriculum coming into effect? So when can we expect to see students really learning under the new system? Either one of you, if you have any idea about the timeline. I think Mr. Binh might have a closer understanding.
Well, the new general education curriculum will be rolled out gradually. With school year 2024-2025 will be the last year to introduce the curriculum to grade 5, grade 9, and grade 12. So,
okay, so
every year we introduce 3.
Okay, so each year a few more grades will be rolled out until 2025, you said, and that will be when the whole system is now in play. Okay, good to know. So I know that public schools have to follow the new curriculum. Hieu, you said that you're very involved with, working with schools, helping them develop their curriculums. Will this affect all schools, or are there some schools that won't be affected by this, or is that a complex question?
It's kind of complex, but not so complex. I think private school is in a different battle. So basically, private school has the leeway to have more English lesson per week compared to public school, and also a lot of the characterization of students and parents in private school, they tend to be more prepared, more international minded. So for a while, I've been working with probably now more than 100 private school system in Vietnam. So if you look at the new curriculum, right, the equivalent outcome for primary school be A1 according to CFR, and A2 for middle school, and probably B1 for the high school. But for the past 3 or 4 years, for a lot of private school, by the end of primary school, majority of the students have achieved A2 already. And I know that some of the leading private school in Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City, they are pushing for B1. So I have witnessed a few graduation classes of primary school students, 50% of them have achieved B1 already. So I think for, and you see like at middle school, they already B2, and then at high school graduation, they already C1 or even pushing the boundary towards C2. And it's, they already sign up for like internationally assessment like IELTS or TOEFL and things like that already. So I think for private school, with the leading school in a lot of cities, it will not be affect them at all. So that's one way to think about it. But in the second way, for a lot of private school that not in the leading group, they're probably in the middle or on the low end. It's a pressure. It's a pressure when you have public school students kind of like have these new curriculum in place with the outcome very clearly indicated. So it's a pressure for even private school in the middle and in the low end group to change themselves, to push the quality of their English and language teaching and learning, so that they can approach the outcome of the leading group and also like exceed the outcome of the public school. And in return, that means the leading group will also feel the pressure to push their language learning as well. One solution I have seen is like before, about 5 or 6 years ago, when I talked about how about introducing language arts into English teaching, a lot of private schools say, no, we only achieve A2 already for primary school, so no need to introduce language art. We are good on our results. But now when you see like a lot of the low end of the middle group of private school pushing the A2 outcome for primary and B1 for middle school. And then you see like a lot of public school have good investment in English language teaching and learning as well. They start to introduce like language art, which now means that they're approaching bilingual and international school kind of like curriculum. So I think it's a good momentum for not just public school, but it's a good momentum for the private school sector as well.
Okay, well, a lot of our viewers today shared questions with us. I see a lot of questions showing up in the chat box. We got a lot of questions beforehand that we've integrated into our discussion today. So thank you for all of that. One question that came up a few times is, how does the curriculum compare to other countries in this region? So how does Vietnam's new curriculum compare to other ASEAN countries, for example? I'm not sure if Hieu has a bit of input on that to start with.
Yes, I mean, like I don't work on the international project much, but I work on a few international projects with a few schools in Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand, but not as intensively as in Vietnam. So I think first we are in the same wave, which means like we shift the curriculum towards more outcome-based and competency-based rather than, as you say, like language focus. Like countries, for example, I see a few friends here from Malaysia and Philippines. So if I say something wrong, feel free to correct me. So for example, like Malaysia, after they're getting independence from, in the past 1950s, they were in the 1960s and 70s were pretty much the same in Vietnam, which means like very focused on very intensive focus on assessment and memorization. And there's a tremendous shift in the national curriculum of Malaysia, English teaching and language learning, especially since 2010, when they start to introduce a lot of, English become one of the primary language of instruction. And also in 2015, they start to launch the project 2015-2025. And the outcome of Malaysian high school graduate could be B2 already. So I think they are in a very good spot compared to a lot of Asian countries. Philippines, the same thing. And Thailand also aim for B1 at high school graduation outcome, like Vietnam. However, the situation is the result is very different across countries. For example, Malaysia is doing extremely great. I think last time I checked, like more than 50% of their high school teachers are in C1 of the language outcome already. Whereas for Philippines, for example, the latest research I've read maybe has been updated, which is like majority of, let's say, faculty in college and university in Philippines was in B2, B1 and B2, right? So even like the result is very different. And for college graduate and working professionals, most of them in Philippines is in B1. But in general, when we look at the ranking of English proficiency index by Education First, Malaysia and Philippines are way above Vietnam in terms of the English proficiency. And that's where they are now. So I think like with the new outcome of B1 for high school target, it would be a tremendous challenge for Vietnam, given how much the other countries have invested and harvested many great results. But the result is there, right? And then we are trying to playing catch up. So I think it's both an opportunity, but also a challenge as well. But we in the same wave of change as the other countries where they benchmark to CEFR. They focus on communication, but a few things that may be the hurdle and the obstacle for Vietnam is, for example, Philippines and Malaysia. For example, Philippines from junior high, which is grade 7 equivalent to Vietnam, English has gradually become the main language of instruction, not just in English as a language subject, but in other subjects as well. And Malaysia, the same thing, right? So I think it would be a challenge for Vietnam where we only teach English as a subject and not integrate it into the other subject as well. And the result in Philippines is is basically what we want to aim for, but Philippines has not achieved it yet, but they still above us. So I think that could be a challenge and an opportunity. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Thank you for that insight. Yeah, some new information for me there as well. So you mentioned this idea of kind of challenges, right? And so I want to switch gears a little bit and think about kind of some of the challenges of implementing the national curriculum. And I'd like to think about students first, right? So yeah, what does this mean for the education of primary and secondary students? How is this going to be a challenge for students to meet this new program? I don't know if you have any input on that, Binh. Maybe we could start with you on this one.
Well, thank you. Well, in the old curriculum that we have it compulsory from grade 6 to grade 12, but with the introduction of the new curriculum, it is compulsory from grade 3 to 12, and we also have the curriculum for grade 1 and 2, which aims at familiarizing our students with the English language. But from what I observed, then a lot of schools across the country have employed the English language program from grade 1. So it requires a lot of changes, especially from the students' perspectives. So I think that the students now have some better opportunities to approach English language at the earlier ages, and there are a variety of things that they can access. For example, the internet and a lot of resources that will help them with learning. So it will be very good for them to start English language. So from my observation, apart from the challenges, then I think that the changes brought about with the new general education curriculum make our education better aligned with the global standards. And that is a very good thing. For example, the CFR or the introduction of the adaptation of the National 6-level proficiency framework of Vietnam, or the one curriculum and multiple textbooks is another very good example of how we move further and move closer to the global standards. And that is very good, and the students can benefit from that.
Can I just make a quick question, I guess, in there? So for the students, they'll all be learning similar language points, similar competencies, similar kind of topics and themes, right? But the actual content they're learning will be different from kind of province to province or city to city. It's at that level, right? At the province level or at the city level that they're choosing the textbooks. And so I guess the students will have less similar learning experiences across the country, right? Because they have similar language points, but different kind of content that they're getting there with. Yeah, so that one curriculum, many textbooks really changes a lot about this kind of shared education experience that we now see in all the students, right, that go into the university level. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And you mentioned that in grades 1 and 2, they're just introducing the language, right, and building a relationship with it. So does that mean there's less concrete objectives for those early levels, or what does that mean? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, there are sets of objectives stated in the curriculum, and I think that they are quite detailed. That our teachers of English can research on that. But in addition to that, we have a lot of can-do statements from the CFR or the 6th level, the National English Proficiency Framework, so they can learn and see how the work expect from an English language learner or an English language user, and then they can link it back to the local context. So that's what we can do, and that is what we need to do. So at the moment, it is now like in a transitioning period. A lot of changes, and not all changes are very easy for the teachers to do. But generally speaking, it is irresistible. So we have to do in some ways.
Yeah, it's a challenge, but it's worth doing, right? Yeah. Okay. Hieu, do you have any comments on how this might change? Yeah, the experience of students under the new curriculum?
I think the change is not much of a challenge to students and parents, as Mr. Binh has said. Nowadays, there's so much alternative resources of learning and exposure to language. I have seen like public school students speak English fluently just because they watch a lot of videos on YouTube or on Netflix and things like that, right? So I think the challenge here is not much on the students and the parents as much as it is for the schools and the teachers. The question I kept asking school and educators and teachers, like, do we innovate quickly enough to meet the needs of the students? The students don't need to innovate to meet our needs. It is us, the pressure is on us to innovate ourselves and our system to meet the learning needs of the students, because I think students have tremendous learning needs, tremendous learning capabilities. And I think the challenge lies more on the school and the teachers than on the students and the parents, because within even the old system, we have seen so many students thrive and excel just because more and more alternative resources of learning are available, not just after school learning centers, but now we have like EdTech and a lot of EdTech products, a lot of learning program online. Students in Vietnam can learn program by a Stanford Gifted Talents program. So I mean, it's available already. So the question is, sometimes I keep asking, like, what if there's a public school where students that are way above the level required for the school year already, and teachers are just like teaching under the level of the student? That for me more of a pain point to be addressed than the student's challenge itself.
Yeah, no, you're both right. That, you know, this is a very dynamic time for the education community at large in Vietnam. Maybe we can talk about something a bit more specific and a heavy point of stress for students, which is assessment. So from the student's point of view, right, assessment has always been a big part of this. From what Mr. Binh was saying earlier, it sounds like we're moving away from the, you know, just grammar and vocabulary knowledge tests of the past. And are there going to be skills tested now a bit more robustly? I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about what you guys see as changes coming to assessment.
Well, before answering your question, I have to admit that I agree with Dr. Hieu in the point that the challenges when we implement the new curriculum is not less on the parents, on the students, but more on teachers and on the local school management. And then among those changes, it is a matter of the competencies of teachers. It is a matter of the facilities available, especially, for example, there are a lot of problems, a lot of challenges that the schools in rural or remote areas that have to face with, and that may make them feel frustrated a little bit when implementing the curriculum. Another thing related to this is the challenges related to testing and assessment. And with the new curriculum, there is a reinforcement of the assessments of the competencies of the students. It means that the assessments functions is determining whether the students have achieved the goals of learning or not. So it requires the teachers to look back at the goals of teaching and learning, and look back at the expected learning outcomes, and then the assessment, because they play a key role in implementing the curriculum and implementing the test and assessment. They need to understand the expectations from the curriculum. So they first need to make sure that, okay, they join a key role, they play a key role in doing assessing the students. So in the past, just designing some vocab test, some reading test, but now on the 4 skills and more than the 4 skills, it is assessing the proficiency of the students, or in this case, the competencies of the students. So there should be a variety ways of assessing the students, not simply test, but also the observation, not simply the summative assessment, but also different formative assessments in order to very quickly identify the strengths and weaknesses of the students, the problems the student may have in order to make adjustment to the teaching and learning. Yeah, it's a lot of things related to assessment that the teachers need to think about, and they may need to be trained for how to properly assess the students, and they also need to do that through their personal professional development.
Sounds like you're saying that there has to be a shift towards not just summative assessment, but also training teachers in how to effectively conduct formative assessment, understand kind of the progress of their students in terms of the skills, and not just as a number, right? Which is what that's the thing that I think everyone passionate about education can agree on, is I wish we didn't need these numbers, and we could focus a bit more on the qualitative elements, right?
Yeah, so it's true. For example, in the past, that many teachers did not, do it properly with the oral exams. Now they have to think about, okay, if I have to assess my students' oral abilities, then what should I do? And then there is the involvement of the rubrics, and then there is the considerations of the halo effects of the things that may affect the quality of assessment, for example. So a lot of elements involved need to be considered.
Yes, the move from answer keys to rubrics is a pretty dramatic one, right? Yeah. So, Hieu, do you have anything to add there about assessment? Thank you so much, Binh, for that. That was really insightful.
Yeah, I want to echo both of you guys about the importance of formative assessment. I think even in the national curriculum, they have set very strong emphasis on the formative assessment, where it's focused on communicative approach. So we have to assess students through group discussion, presentations, projects, and other forms as well, not just multiple choice and standardized tests. So I think it's a challenge to train teachers to do formative assessment ongoing throughout the school year or even throughout the lesson. How you do formative assessment for a class size of 50 students is a challenge. Even a 30 student class size is a challenge for a lot of teachers as well. But I think there's going to be this big national assessment at the end of like high school to be used as a high school graduation and also like college entrance. I think that could be a very exciting thing, scary a little bit to look forward to, because for many years that had been what we've been taught to master, and the test as I grew up in and many students are currently doing is very language per se test. It's very focused on phonetics, vocabulary, grammar, grammatical rules, and a lot of things that not necessarily geared towards competency, but geared towards mastery of the language elements. To shift that towards competency-based assessment will be a challenge, both in the design, the teaching, but also in the admin work as well. How you gonna grade essay writing by millions of students taking the test a year, for example. But I mean, in terms of like teaching, the questions probably like in people like Mr. Binh is how to train the new teachers to come out of teacher training program or undergrad teaching training program to teach students based on competency and to assess students based on competency, so that no matter what the assessment will look like, because one rule or one fundamental element of competency-based teaching is you don't care about the format of the test. As long as students have the competency, they can nail every single test. It only takes a short time for them to prep for the format of the test, right? So I think that is a challenge for a lot of teachers, even current teachers in service, and also like new teachers that are going to join this service as well, like how you can read the competency descriptors of the national curriculum, have all these amazing materials and textbook available to you, and combine that and use in your classroom, that I could shut my eyes for 11 years and 6 months and only focus on teaching the student to competency, and whatever the format the test is, IELTS or TOEFL or whatever, my student can still nail it. I think that could be the beauty, the sweet spot of doing competency-based teaching and assessment, but it's a challenge for a lot of ongoing teachers as well as teachers that are going to join the game at some point in time.
So just to be clear, we don't have a set kind of understanding, a finalized understanding of what the exit of high school test will look like right now, right? This is still under development, still kind of a little bit of an unknown at the moment, right? In some ways, it's happening live, right? Okay, good to know. So I want to, just because we have limited time, I think we could talk a lot about assessment, but I want to talk a little bit more about teachers, right? So this clearly has a lot of changes for let's talk about schools a little bit. There's a lot of changes for government schools, right? A lot of changes for the teachers in government school programs. Do you see this as having kind of long-term effects 5 years from now and beyond on private language schools or universities, schools that don't have to follow the curriculum? I think you both probably have ideas to share on that one, right?
Okay, so I'm gonna go first. I think, like as I said earlier about the private school, it will be a pressure for them to even do better than they already have done. With interestingly, because I just finished a big project with one of the biggest after school learning centers in Vietnam. They were in the process of revamping the curriculum. Sorry, cannot give you the name, but I think the school already looked at the outcome described by the national curriculum, and then they feel like, okay, now my students, before the students go to the public school and they only learn this, so they go to my after school learning center, they only learn a little bit more. But now they at the public school, they learn more. So I need to revamp my curriculum and introduce more element onto the curriculum as well. So now they're not just talking about language or starters, movers, and flyers. They talk about language and arts, how to integrate 21st century skills into the language teaching and learning as well. So they want to do more than what the public school do in the national curriculum as well. So I think that is as I said, is a very good momentum of a sense of competition, really, for private school. And I think it's benefit the students tremendously, because you don't want to go to the public school during daytime learning the same thing as you go to the private after school learning center and doing the same thing, right? So I think something above that could be great. And I am very happy to see a lot of private after school learning centers integrate language arts, 21st century skills, deep learning, project-based learning very heavily into their curriculum. I think that's its beauty. Also, I'm in the process of working with 2 private universities to revamp their English curriculum for more than 25,000 students. And they feel the pressure too. Before, like, their graduating class could be like B1 or A2 is okay. But now they go in very aggressively to do B2 as like the outcome requirement for even the non-English major. So now they start to increase from 5 period of English lesson to 10 period of English lesson. And really, like, I feel the pressure, which is a good pressure, because if you want to improve your college level quality, right? And now eventually the students graduate from the K-12, push up the quality. You need to be well prepared, not like they're going to graduate with B1 and my English curriculum start in year 1 as like A1. It's impossible, right? So I think with the private university, they are going to change, and I see the most aggressive, which is potentially the most successful university as well, are making big move, and they revamp the entire curriculum within a year. And now they aim for B2 as graduation requirement for their non-English major students. And then the faculty feel pressure too, because you're going to teach students to reach B2. You need to get at least C1 and C2 in your competency. So now a lot of English teachers now to push, they either take the V step or they need to take the IELTS to really push the boundary as well. So I think it's a good trigger. It's a lot of challenges, but it's a good opportunity, and everyone has a stake in this game. And if we execute it persistently and with efficiency, it would be a great future. I'm a little bit optimistic, sorry. So but I think
that's okay. We need optimism these days, so that's okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like your main kind of points are that the private language schools there will be a new kind of floor, right? That they have to innovate above and around in order to stay relevant, right? And you also made some comments about universities, and Binh, I know that you're involved with universities as well. Do you foresee any kind of changes at the university level? Do your ideas line up with Hieu's comments?
Well, the changes are also going on with the universities. As I say, at the moment, there are some kind of conflicts between the expected outcomes with secondary school system and the university system. For high school, and isn't expected to achieve level 3 or B1, but for the completion of university, then it's also B1 for non-English major. So that is a kind of conflict. But at the moment, from what I observed, that many universities are now trying to push the levels of the students when they graduate. So I think that at this transitioning period, the changes are bringing a lot of triggers the changes among different groups of institutions and schools and even teachers and students. So that is very positive.
Yeah, no, it sounds like this is going to reverberate throughout the industry, right? This change is going to not just affect those who are directly using the new curriculum, but really all of the levels. Even I think if we analyzed it and thought about it more, even the preschool levels would be affected by the changes to the curriculum. So yeah, no, that's really interesting. I guess for teachers then, I think that teachers have such a range of experience, background, passions, and resources, right? I feel like resources is one of the big defining factors in Vietnam between different education settings, right? That when I go out into the provinces, that it's a very different experience, very different access to kind of resources sometimes than people have in the cities. And I was wondering if you guys had any comments about that element of the challenge, right? Because this is a national curriculum. You know, I'm in Ho Chi Minh City, and so is Binh and Hieu is in Hanoi. And I think we get a little bit caught up in our big city mentality sometimes, working with so many, you know, different students. We get a lot of really talented students, and they stand out to us. I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts about the challenges that are going to be faced, maybe the difference between the countryside and the city. Ben, do you have any thoughts about that? I know it's something, I know you're involved with teacher training in a wide range of areas. So do you see it as a kind of different challenges in the city and the countryside?
I think that the teachers are having a lot of difficulties in implementing the curriculum because a number of factors. So firstly, it is a matter of changing the mindset because the new curriculum requires the teachers to think more about their role. It is not simply providing the students with the knowledge that they have, but now they have to, you know, shift between different active roles in order to facilitate the learning, and they have to improve the language competencies. Because in the past, it's okay if I can have a number of English words if I were trained at university, and that's enough. But now a lot of changes are coming, and it requires the teachers to have a better English proficiency. Okay, you have to pronounce more correctly. If you don't want to, you know, make the students feel this is something that I learn, and then the mistakes sometimes I'm not aware of, or when I'm aware of the mistakes and they have a look back at what the teachers teaching in the classroom and say, our teachers teach the lesson wrong, for example. So a lot of consequences in between. So it requires the teachers to constantly improve their English language proficiency. In addition to that, they have to think again about the understanding of teaching methodologies. So to address on the changes in the curriculum, for example, the requirements for the application of technology, maybe the use of new textbooks, and how can I manipulate the different uses of the textbooks in the curriculum, and also the introductions of the CBLT or project-based learnings, or some other things that may be effective, or the flipped classroom, for example, okay, which may be very necessary for the students. So the teachers need to update themselves with the professional knowledge and also the strategies that can be employed in the classroom.
So in the interest of time, I'll attack that same question from another angle. Hieu, how can schools kind of support teachers? What can schools or teachers as groups, right? Because sometimes it's self-driven by teachers. What can teachers do to kind of, meet this challenge that Binh just really clearly outlined?
Yeah, so I think I agree with Mr. Binh on a lot of things. I think like I work with school for the past 6 years, even in like the private school, with a lot of resources, both human resources and financial resources, to invest into support for teachers. And here are just a few solutions, but it would be a challenge even for a lot of school. So I think I agree with Mr. Binh. The first thing is the mindset. A lot of teachers, even in big cities, have been trained as a student in a particular way of teaching language. They focus a lot on what we call like a little bit technical here, like grammar translation approach or audiolingual approach, to switch gear from those methodology towards more communicative language teaching or content-based instruction, or cognitive academic language proficiency would be a challenge for a lot of teachers because they did not learn as a student or were trained as teachers in that particular way. So I think, as I said, with the new curriculum or with anything, a new initiative, teacher would be the main challenge and also the main driver for quality in education as well. So it's the biggest challenge, but the biggest factor for contributing towards quality as well. So a few things we have done in the past with private school setting. As Mr. Binh has said, this is one curriculum, multiple textbooks. So there's a lot of resources out there. One of the role that teachers has to be done is they pretty much like a material curator and researcher in a way where they have to go out there and find materials equivalent to the level that they're teaching at and relevant as well. So I think as a school, either a private school or public school, if you can form a team of teachers who have the capacity to do researcher R&D work, to really combine materials to create a system of materials from lesson plan to supplementary materials to enriching materials to supplement for all the skill, because remember there's always a gap between every textbook with the proficiency required by the national curriculum. There's no perfect textbook that meets all the requirement. So the teaching team that in charge of R&D need to build materials, a bank of materials to bridge that gap so that all the teachers in the school can get access to these materials and build over time. And we have seen many private school already release their own version of supplementary textbook where they use on top of what the official textbook they use as well. I think to have that institutional knowledge hard coded into a textbook of the school or even the province, or it can be an effort of like a district, for example, or just a school, will be tremendous, because the capacity of teachers to develop materials is as diverse as the student's ability. So that is the first thing. The second thing is definitely teacher training. In the past, there's the teacher training approach to be very one-off, very like once or twice a year. But as we said here, even disregard the new curriculum, teacher training has to be ongoing. It's not going to be like one or two workshops a year. So every school needs to adopt the mindset that they need to build a pathway of professional development training with modules for teachers, either internally or with external collaboration, so that teachers pretty much have ongoing teacher training throughout the year. It may take 3 or 4 years to train a teacher from pre-service and ongoing until they can master all the roles that they have to fill in. So a lot of schools that we work with, even in private school, they have developed modules where it's an online platform with at least like 30 different modules on top of what the teachers got in their university education. So I think the mindset to professional development has to be more systematic, more consistent, and more ongoing, rather than once or twice a year. And the third thing that, especially with big school system, need to focus on is quality control and quality assurance system. It's a concept from a higher education landscape, but it's time to actually look at how to build a strong, rigorous quality control and quality assurance system where data is collected on a very frequent basis, and have the management team sit down and identify loophole and blind spot in the quality where our majority of the teachers struggling with. We have like, let's say like 20 classes in grade 5. Why are these 5 classes of grade 5 struggling and the other 15 classes of grade 5 are not struggling at all? You know, all of these data-driven decision-making and analysis with a very strong quality control and assessment will help teachers and school to manage the quality of the whole school, so that we can ensure the equality and equity in education, rather than wait until like the end of the school year exam or like the end of like the level exam to see, oh, that is the result, but then the time is gone. We can't come back, turn back time and help the students. Right. So I think 3 key things here is a system of resources and materials, a system of professional development, and a system of quality control and quality assurance.
Can I jump?
That's very systematic approach you had. Yeah, of course, Ben, please.
Yeah. Speaking of the mindset changing, I would like to share with you one encounter with when I work with local teachers in my teacher training programs, and I used to talk to a number of local teachers when I gave them the a selected unit in the textbook, and I say, okay, how would you employ the activities pre-designed in these textbook? And they say, I will go one by one. So would you like to make changes to, for example, omit one activity and design another one which is more motivating, which is more encouraging to the students, things like that. And then the teachers share with me they didn't dare to do so. So it is a matter of like, they have the whole fear of changing the things, because all the things in the textbook were something compulsory. They have to follow strictly. And I think that with the new curriculum, they are given more freedom. So they have the right to choose the materials. They have the right to make the decisions that are appropriate or relevant to their local teaching context. So in this case, that the freedom needs to be more smartly used. They could talk to their school management. They could talk to the head of the division of their school. And I think that from this sense, that I think that the officials from MOET, from the Department of Education and Training, and the school management should be hands in hands with them in order to support the teachers and also support the teaching, rather than just letting the teachers, it's very hard for them with a lot of challenges. And then from this side, for example, we can talk about another new point of the new curriculum, that is extracurricular activities. And because in Vietnam it's considered to be, English is a foreign language, so it's very hard. So we have to create some simulated environment for learning and using the language. So the curriculum introduced the new extracurricular activities. There is also a teacher handbook for using the extracurricular activities. So in this case, I think that the MOET, the DOET, and school management should work and support the teachers in order to organize these extracurricular activities for teaching and learning.
Okay, so thank you both for sharing those, because it sounds to me, if I were to just synthesize some of your ideas together, that we need teachers with 21st century skills as well, right? Teachers that can think critically and problem solve and collaborate together and communicate what they're doing to other teachers as well, so that we all kind of can move forward as a community. I'm glad to hear that we have a few years to kind of get this together until it's all finished, right? Because we have time to adapt as we're progressing through. I hope that, I know that through the work that both of you are doing, you're directly trying to support teachers during this transition and support schools during this transition. So we have gone a few minutes over our expected time. I'm sure we could keep going for another hour if we wanted to. I hope that our kind of focus and attention we gave to the different areas throughout this session was useful to those who joined us. And I hope that, in the future, I would love to get to talk to each of you again at more length about kind of what's going on with the system. I think that I learned a lot today from both of your insights. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of your experience and expertise. I do want to share one little element with everyone before we go. We have, you guys talked about how to help teachers, ongoing development, right? And it's coming from publishers as well. And at National Geographic Learning, that's part of our responsibility, right? To help support teachers in having the tools they need and the avenues for development that make it easy for schools and easy for teachers to continue to develop. So I just want to share one little thing before we say goodbye. We have at National Geographic Learning a few resources that teachers can use. These are publicly available, of course. Our talented regional teacher trainers, including Will, who is in the chat box today, have a new series of professional development videos, webinars that are titled Keeping It Real, which is a title I love. And it's all about practical tips for teaching different skills. We've got the link down here, and you can also find it. I believe Will is dropping in the chat box now. So yeah, please check out our new series of local to Asia webinars. And we also have a global series of webinars as well. It's a backlog, so all of the webinars we've delivered globally can be accessed here. You can see the link at the bottom, or will add it in. And I know that a lot of teachers are transitioning into online teaching right now, and we have a lot of resources available for you to check out about all kinds of topics and different segments of education. With that said, if you want to watch today's recording, I've seen a few of you ask that in the chat box. We will, at our landing page, our website for EduVoice Vietnam, which again is being added in the chat box. You guys can go back and review any of the discussion, share with your colleagues. And yeah, thank you so much to our guests, and thank you so much to our attendees and our support in the chat box. We look forward to sharing with you guys our next interviews in the future. And happy teaching, everyone. I hope you stay safe, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you again to Hieu and Binh. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.